your patience. We appreciate you guys being here. I hope everybody had a great holiday. We did take about a month or two off just for the holidays, so we're really excited to get back with everyone on our first webinar of the year as we go over the Dolomites, the sensorial Dolomites. So Karen actually just returned, which is really awesome. So she'll be kind of going into a lot of what her recent experience was with some of our partners there, giving you guys insights into some of the accommodations we work with, some of the experiences, and of course, some of what to expect for the upcoming Olympics, the Winter Olympics for 2026, which are going to be held there. So we're going to be diving into all of those things and more as we go through. But first, just a little bit about who we are and what we do, how we work. We always like to give people a quick brief on this for those of you that have not worked with us before. Our main focus, of course, we are a full service DMC. We're based here out of Rome, Italy. And our main focus is preserving culture and tradition through meaningful, sustainable, and exceptional travel. So we're a multicultural and multilingual team. What that means is this picture you see is actually our last summit that we held in the Val d'Orcia, which is southern Tuscany. And this is where we bring our entire team together, both from Italy and our team based in the United States. And so we're about half and half. So we've got basically half Americans and half Italians on our team, which is really cool because it does very much represent how we were founded. I'm obviously from the United States. Karen here was born and raised in Rome. And so our mission has been to connect people back with locals and really let them experience the authentic and immersive kind of cultural experiences that are available here throughout the country. So yeah, perfect. So a little bit about how we work. We do a tremendous amount of R&D, which is why we are based here out of Rome. So we've got a team that's spread all over the country. So we don't put anything in our itineraries that we haven't ourselves vetted. That's very important for a lot of reasons, one of which is to make sure that there is good alignment in values with every partner that we're working with, right? We want to make sure that the partners we work with are locally owned and operated. We want to make sure that they're reflecting the character and the traditions of their community so that it is an authentic experience for the travelers that are engaging with them. We provide turnkey itineraries in Travelify. So unlike a lot of DMCs that you may be accustomed to in some different parts of the world, we don't provide just super itemized breakdowns of like, you know, if you just come to us and ask us for, so we say like no a la carte services, right? So if you came to us and asked us for like, I need just a tour here and a driver there and maybe an accommodation here, we're probably not going to be the best fit for you. We specialize in turnkey travel design, and that's because we know all of our partners that also know each other. And so we're creating those connections so that these itineraries run as smoothly as possible. And then finally, just on the point of local management, just another thing that sets us apart a little bit, we do provide local manager to every client when they come into country. So that means that you have somebody that is their main point of contact, who is intimately familiar with their itinerary. Oftentimes, they're also the travel designer for that itinerary. They know all of their partners personally that are involved in that itinerary, and they're their lifeline. So not just an emergency hotline, but also somebody that can act as their full-time concierge once they arrive.
Well,
So,
it's not an emergency hotline. It's a real person on WhatsApp, right? That they have access to.
So it's a specific person.
But we do have the intro webinar that I'm sure Tracy will be happy to share with you, and you can reach out to us. So this was just a very quick intro because we have a lot to cover on the Dolomites. But just this is just to reiterate what Jess said. So we're the perfect fit for you if you looking for turnkey itineraries. You can meet our minimum budget, which of course is some exceptions to that. It's all based on season and location. You value sustainable travel, that's important, and you like to plan ahead.
And just guys, really quickly, as we're going through this presentation, we are going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. But in the interim, if you do have some immediate questions, please use the Q&A feature, the chat feature, and we'll do our best to get back to you either right away or towards the end of the presentation. We'll address it then.
Yes, and we'll try our best to get you out of here on time. So, by the way, I'm Karen. For those of you who have not met me before, I think I've recognized a lot of names. So like Jet said, I was born and raised here, and then went to study a little bit in the US, met this guy, got stuck in Georgia for a while, and then I had to bring it back to Italy.
Did not get stuck in Georgia. Georgia is a very nice place.
Yes, it is. I love it. But that's a story for another conversation. So let's jump right in and talk about the Dolomites. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the Dolomites, and please, like, tell me I'm wrong, shout in the chat, you know, let's have a discussion about this, and also happy to connect later to be mindful of time. But the Dolomites are not just one destination, right? It's not like when you're going into, I mean, it's even uncomparable to some of the regions, because it's not about how big it is, but you are on the mountains and mountain passes, and recognizing how long it takes to get from place to place. It's very important. And of course, different villages offer different things and they have different peaks, but ultimately we think that it's much better to choose one destination and experiencing it inside out, right? Climbing the peaks, hiking, skiing, whatever it may be, versus just spending, you know, multiple hours a day in the car, driving from place to place, just to trying to see that lake and that peak and that ski slope, right? So we're gonna focus in here and share with you about some of our favorite destinations. But before we do that, again, very briefly running through this, I'm sure that most of you here are aware about some of this information, but it's important to understand that the Dolomites are a part of the larger Alps, right? Span for 15,000 kilometers. So big, but relatively small, right? And, you know, we say there's about 18 main peaks that the Dolomites are known for, and they get up to 3,000 meters. We will have some conversions in feet just to make it easier for you guys. But again, it's important to understand that the Dolomites is not just like one, it's like going to Florence, right? Or going to Rome. It's important to understand that they're part of the UNESCO, but they are part of the larger Alps. And there's a lot of different villages, cultures that we're going to cover within the Dolomites area. Do you have anything to add to
Yeah,
that?
I mean, one thing that you're going to notice as we're going through this is the Dolomites are definitely a really cool intersect of cultures as well, because prior to World War I, the Dolomites were actually a part of the Austrian Empire. And so since then, it's shifted obviously over to Italy when unification happened. And so it's this really interesting intersect between sort of German, Austrian culture and language, and then obviously Italian, you know, culinary traditions, and then Italian language as well. So it's a really, really interesting place. It has a lot to offer from those perspectives too.
So again, just very briefly, the Dolomites do span over 3 different regions of Italy, right? Trentino Alto Adige, Veneto, and Friuli Venezia Giulia. You may recognize some of the most famous peaks that people come, especially for skiing and hiking: Marmolada, Tre Cime, not too far from Cortina, Seceda, and Sella. They're all, it's important to understand, again, miles wise, the spaces are not that far from each other, but it takes a long time, right? It takes a couple of hours to get from some of the main sub-regions within the Dolomites. There, like Jet was saying, there are 3 different languages: Italian, German, and Latin, including the Austrian, of course, culture. So I don't know if this is a question, but we get this question a lot. And I was honestly confused myself the first time that I visited the Dolomites, because I would see Sud Tirol, like South Tyrol, then I would see Alto Adige, and I'm like, but the region is Trentino Alto Adige. What is going on here? So Sud Tirol and Alto Adige actually are the same thing. It's just South Tyrol. It's the way the Austrians call it, and Alto Adige is the way the Italians call it. So we've highlighted here the different sub areas within the Dolomites. And it's important to understand, again, the cultural differences, which we'll get to a little more details in the next slide. But in some areas, just to put this in perspective, like Italian is not even taught in some schools. And, you know, well, of course, Alto Adige and, you know, the main part of the Dolomites is in Italy, it is that, that huge mix of culture. And of course, Trentino is more culturally, it's more Italian culturally. And of course, there's a lot more of the history of how that happens, right, after the war and Italians claiming the territory. But of course, that's a conversation for another time. So if you have any questions on that, happy to hop on another call and talk more, because our partners actually, and it's a huge part of the experiences, is that understanding of how this cultural mesh happened throughout the history. So that's something that in every experience our partners highlight. Little fun fact, actually, this is a feedback we get a lot, like, oh, you know, if I went and I would have loved to know, and this may not necessarily been our clients, because now we actually disclaim it in the itineraries, but we hear people all the time, some travel advisors like, I visited, it would have been good to know about the spouse, right? So in the saunas, this is just a fun fact. The closer you get, the further north you go, the closer you get to Austria, the more nude people will be. The further south, Italians, this is kind of a joke, right? Typically, they like to keep their clothes on. It's funny because we were at one of the accommodations in Sarentino, which is one of the areas we will cover. And they're like, well, we're kind of in between cultures, so we accept both. You can go nude, you can go fully clothed, but in some spas, in the hot areas, this is not like in the jacuzzi, in the pool, obviously you can wear a bikini, but in the sauna, the Turkish bath, you are not allowed to go in with your clothes. So it's kind of an important detail that we like to mention in each item in the itinerary to let people know, especially, considering how, reserved and intimate sometimes the American culture could be. Location, everybody's probably already aware from this, but depending on where you are in the Dolomites, right, it's going to be a different travel distance. So 3 hours by train from Venice, 2 hours from Verona, closest airport, of course, Venice. And it takes 2 to 3 hours driving, depending on where you are, whether you're coming from Lake Garda or Venice. Lake Garda depends a lot on where you are on the lake, and then it also depends a lot on when you're going. And of course, the best way to maximize the time and the distance is to fly in or out of Venice. So we like to use the Dolomites, depending on how the rest of the trip looks like, either as the last location, so it's more of their outdoor, slower hiking, especially if they're coming from busy cities, or again, depending on the scope of the trip, it may be.
And this can be a really good pairing with like a lake region trip, right? Where people are coming from, say, Lake Como or Lake Garda. This is a really nice transition for their trip if they want to end in, say, Venice and fly out of there. So we've done that quite a few times as well.
Absolutely. So what are some of the challenges? I think one of the things we hear the most, and again, absolutely open to your questions. In fact, I would love to have a list of 10 questions, right, by the time we end the webinar, is choosing the right home base. Because sometimes you go online, you Google a hotel that's like Dolomites. First of all, it's important to understand that a lot of hotels outside of the Dolomites, they use Dolomites, right? Just because it's attractive. I can name, we're probably going to talk about a lot of hotels that you may have never heard of, just because we're not going to cover Forestis, we're not going to cover Sensoria, like some of those bigger, virtuoso, more known properties that you may already be familiar with. But it's important to understand that even Forestis is not technically a part of the Dolomites. So just be mindful when you're picking the destination of where they actually are. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. Concentrated mass tourism. This happens not just in the Dolomites, but like another perfect example is Sardinia. Unfortunately, there's only an amount of information that gets to specifically the American market, right? American, Canadian market, and that's where everybody's going to. So you have these hotspots of mass tourism within the Dolomites that if somebody went there, be like, oh, this is terrible, right? But the reality is there are so many villages and so many towns that they may not have the fame and the popularity because the Instagram influencer hasn't made it out there, but they are equally as beautiful, if not more, and definitely offer a much more authentic, off the beaten path and immersive experiences. The Dolomites, it's not well connected by public transport. There, obviously, you can take the train to Bolzano. There are some other places where the regional train gets to, but for the most flexibility, having a rental car is a must. If they don't feel comfortable, especially in the winter with driving with the chains, which is perfectly fine if you have the snow chains on the car. Getting drivers, it's very important to understand that unless you hire a driver that is, and you're moving around the Dolomites and they're going to stay with you, you're going to have to get a different person, right, in each location because of how far it is for them to get back to their family at night with the snow and the conditions. So that's just important to keep in mind. And then we're going to talk about how much time do you really need to experience, right, the Dolomites. Oh, and I guess I'm going to answer that question right away. And the answer is, if you stay concentrated, for us at least, if you stay concentrated in one village, right, let's say hiking is the purpose of the Dolomites trip, I would recommend a minimum of 4 nights, right, that for one location. If people want to see the entire Dolomites, which of course that would be really hard to do in a trip, but I would say a week to 10 days would be recommended, and definitely spending a minimum of 3 nights per location. We don't do 1 or 2 nighters. Again, the exception may be if they're coming into Bolzano, right? They want to spend 1 or 2 nights there before they get their car and drive to the Dolomites. That would be fine. But to really experience all that those areas have to offer, you need a minimum of 3 to 4 nights in each location. All right, really quickly, the travel seasons of the Dolomites, which are very different than a lot of the other places in Italy. So summer peak, July to the first week of September. The first week of September, actually September 13th, always on my birthday, kids go back to school. 12th, 13th. So the local tourism, the European tourism kind of empties out. So you're going to have a lot of, some spillover, but usually that is the end of the summer peak. As far as winter, after Christmas, it's very busy all the way through February. And actually, this past month, I went the week after January 6th, which is a national holiday, the Epiphany, La Befana. And that week was amazing because it was empty. And we picked it on purpose because, of course, when we travel, we're also looking for those gaps during the high season to recommend to our travelers, right? Because I don't think we have any travelers that are like, yeah, I want to go when it's crazy busy. So that's a really good week to know if you have travelers that want to go for skiing during the winter. Shoulder, April, June, September to November. And hotel closure, a lot of them actually don't close at all. And the ones that close for maintenance, they close either in April or November. Very different from the rest of Italy.
Just really quickly, guys, we did have a question. Is there enough snow to ski in early December? So think through like anywhere else, like, I just got back from Colorado for a ski trip. So like, you have to understand that the earlier or the later you are in the season, the higher risk. And with climate change, that's getting shorter and shorter. And so the answer is maybe, right? So if you're looking at early December, really, it depends on the season that they're having because conditions can be so variable. So leading up to that, about a month out, you can usually tell based on the forecasts and the conditions, if there's going to be enough snow to actually open some of the resorts. I guarantee almost every time during that time of the year, you're never going to have 100% open, right? You're always going to have just a small percentage open. So your peak ski seasons are really going to be January and February. Exactly right. So that's where you're safe
after Christmas, right? So I went this past February, perfect snow condition, beautiful. We went last year in February together. Remember, there was barely any snow. I mean, you were comparing it to Colorado. Is it worth it to go skiing? And, in this case, the answer was not really. So I think January and February is still pretty safe. Again, it depends on the season. And we can obviously help you navigate that. But of course, you are competing in the US, especially with places like Colorado. So it's important just to give realistic expectations to your travelers. Hope that answered that question, but great question. So that was kind of like a very quick overview. So let's jump to some of the destinations that I'm sure you're all here to learn about. So how do you choose the right destination within the Dolomites, right? So that your travelers are not hopping places every 1 or 2 nights and they're actually getting to experience the essence. We've selected a few for you. Of course, those are the ones we know the best. We by no means claim to know and be experts in every single town of the Dolomites because there are many, but those are some of the ones that are favorite and that we have partner accommodations that provide a great well-rounded experience in the location in which they're at. This we have on every webinar. You're going to see a brand score when we get to the actual accommodation, which, it's scoring that place in terms of location, sustainability, amenities, food and culinary, and character story. Because we tend to work with places that are a little bit away from the big tourist hotspot, you're probably not going to find that one of our partner accommodations in the middle of Cortina is going to have a brand score of 5, but that's simply because it is a more known location that may be more impacted by mass tourism. Do we have a question? Okay. So let's talk about Alta Badia really quick. And I don't know if you want to talk about Alta Badia since you've been, or
I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. So this is an area that we really love. Some of our favorite accommodations are here, and it is not one of the most known areas. So that's one of the reasons why we love it, because it's less crowded. Like you can drive, again, an hour and a half and be like, oh my goodness, this is the middle of peak tourist season. And then you can come to Alta Badia, depending on the village you choose, and be totally relaxed with not many people around. So it's very important to understand that the contrast can be that drastic. It's a valley, it's part of Sud Tirol, and it's between the Sella group, which is actually a very known skiing area. And one of the most beautiful nature park in the Dolomites. It includes the villages of Corvara, Corfosco, La Villa, San Cassiano, and Badia. And our favorite accommodation is in Badia that we'll cover in a second. It's Latin culture, right? So the first time I went there, I thought people didn't speak Italian. And that's because they had a super, super heavy accent. And actually, a lot of them don't speak Italian, especially the older generations. You're at about 5,000 feet of elevation, and one of the most iconic peaks is the Sassonger at 10,000, almost 500 feet. And it is part of the Dolomites super ski. So for those of you, including the circular famous route of Sella Ronda. So for those of you who don't know, and I don't know if it's the same in Colorado, but one of the biggest differences, and I don't ski personally, so Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Dolomites, everything is connected. You have over 150 ski slopes, right? So you can actually get from village to village within the ski circuits versus,
you're not isolated to one, say, resort town like you would be in a typical like Rocky Mountain ski destination. You are connected to all of these different unique villages with their own unique experiences by way of either gondola or the ski lifts, right? So it is a really cool concept, and it's such a vast territory, especially in the Alta Badia. It's one of the biggest ski resorts I've ever seen outside of maybe Whistler. But for those ski enthusiasts that are really going for these winter sports, it's a fantastic location.
Cortina is not located in Alta Badia. We're going to cover Cortina, of course, so just bear with us. And one more quick note on that. What I mentioned earlier, that the Dolomites is not well connected by public transport, meaning getting there, right? It's not well connected. If you're going skiing, even if you don't have a car, because of this connection between the ski slopes and the many ski buses that there are, like every single accommodation, even if you don't have a car, they offer ski buses. And in the summer, same thing for hiking. It is well connected once you are within a certain area. So you can go around the whole Alta Badia, right? Exactly. And not need a car.
Right. That's exactly right.
Whoops. Okay, so let's talk about our favorite accommodations. Probably in the whole of the Dolomites, this place is not for everyone. Obviously, it only has 5 rooms. 360-degree views of mountains and valleys. The only other buildings that you can see is their farm where they keep the horses, right? A couple of other residences, but a stunning valley. And this is actually the oldest maso in Alta Badia. So for us, it does have a Brent score of 5 because even though it only has 5 rooms, they have an amazing spa, right? That you think would accommodate a lot more than that, even though it looks pretty small. They are family run and operated. This woman here behind the cat, she's the owner and her family. Throughout, she comes, she tells you the story. Throughout the property, you can see photos of how it was pre-war and how, it still stood after the war. So this is a very special place because it is the oldest chalet in Alta Badia. Family owned and run. They have a spa. I mean, the spa is not huge, but they have a Nordic bath outside, which a lot of the other accommodations don't have, even though they may have a larger indoor spa area. They have horses on property, so we'll talk in a second about the experiences that they offer. Farm to table breakfast, obviously not in the winter. They have a garden where everything is freshly picked and prepared for you in the morning. Historic property. So if you have anybody that's fascinated with the history of the area, this would be a great experience. It's important to understand also why I said it's not for everyone. During the high season, they only rent the full property. But this is great because when you have families or groups, you get to, you get your own private oldest chalet, but yet you have the services of a hotel.
Right.
So it could be a great alternative to just say getting a self-catered villa where you have to go out every day to get your food and whatnot. But they do also can have some flexibility during low season or even during high season if they have some holes, how do you say, in reservations that they can also rent by the room.
Yeah, and they've got a fantastic private chef that they work with. So if you guys want to, your clients want to have their own sort of, private dinner, they have a traditional stufa, which is like the old, living room / dining room that used to be built in these kind of places. And it's all extremely well preserved. It feels incredibly authentic. And it is like, it really does make you feel like where you are. So this is an experience more than anything,
Right.
with the amenities that are at a very high 5-star level. It's an incredible
Right.
place for these people.
And walking in, you would never know, right? You're like, oh my goodness, I'm in this old, right? Obviously, it's being careful renovated, but the feel is that experience of being back in the 80s or the 90s, right? Or even earlier, but yet you have all of your modern comfort. So very off the beaten path. This accommodation specifically, we would recommend having a car. You can drive 5 to 10 minutes and still be within access of the lifts and the gondolas, and takes you to other places. But it is, like I said, the valley, you're the only place there. So definitely we would recommend a car. Hiking, we'll talk about the experience in a second, but people that are looking for seclusion, views, they don't want to be around a lot of people, privacy, but yet want some amenities, this would be a great accommodation for them. Experiences, again, you'll see obviously some of those will repeat for some of the accommodations, but winter, ski, snow sledding, snowshoeing, right, sleigh rides. And then they have, so December 6th, they have this creepy tradition, Campus of San Nicolò. And it's actually, if you just Google it, you can see it. I should have put a picture of that, but
I want to dress up in the monster outfit. They scare the kids.
Yeah, actually they scare the bad, supposedly they scare the bad kids and whatever, like not scare the good kids, but it is a very interesting, peculiar tradition. Maybe not great for young children, but an older kid may get a kick out of it. If you have people that are going during earlier in the ski season in December, maybe good to keep in mind. Summer, obviously it's great hiking, biking, Via Ferrata, we'll talk about it in a second, which I will never do. They have a garden, so like I said, you can also do a garden cooking class, you can plan massages, all those type of things that we won't spend too much time on. And then in the fall, there's another amazing festival, and there's a couple that we'll cover throughout each of those locations. Some of those festivals happens in multiple of the villages, right? So just because I put it here for Badia doesn't mean it's not going to happen, let's say in Cortina. But the Desmontegada is a festival where the farmers, they bring the cattle from the mountain pastures to the valley for the winter, right? Because obviously they're not going to leave them up where there's going to be snow. And it's just a really big festival where everybody comes out. You have to think that most of the people that live in the Dolomites, they've been there for centuries, the families. Like, you don't hear a lot of younger, unless they go there specifically to be ski instructors, right? To be in the outdoor sports career. There's a lot of just people that have been there for centuries. And so when they all come out during those festivals and celebrations, it's an absolutely amazing experience for, somebody coming from the US or Canada or anywhere else to experience. And then of course, this specific chalet, they have their own horses, so you can do horseback riding right there, cooking classes and a lot more. But like I said, we'll move on. I could talk about them all day.
All right. So for your high adventure clients, people that are looking to do something a little crazy, the Via Ferrata is something that you're going to hear a lot in this region. And the Alta Badia is really the hub of the Via Ferrata in the Dolomites. So basically Via Ferrata translates into like iron treks. And so what this means is basically these are very, very steep, sometimes vertical climbs throughout the Dolomites, throughout the mountain ranges, that wherein you are you're hooked to either a steel cable like the one that you see in this image, or you're climbing a series of ladders or or stairs, but everything is very steep and you're getting some of the best views of the Dolomites that you can get. So these range in difficulty. You can go all the way from like a 2-hour day to a multi-day trek. So for people that are just wanting to kind of get a taste for this, there are experiences that are great for beginners, especially in this area. But then for those that are wanting to do something a little more intrepid, you have multi-day treks wherein they stay at these little huts that are strategically located along the route. And those are obviously fully guided. experiences as well that can be multi-day. So this is a pretty wide range of experience, but for people that are avid climbers or adventure seekers, it's a really, really unique thing to experience in this area. So just something to keep in mind, specifically for the Alta Badia, but you can find them all over the Dolomites.
Very sensorial, too much, too sensorial for me, facing all of our fears. Any questions? Well, I guess we can save questions for later, but if you have more questions in Alta Badia, like I said, there are other villages. This was just our favorite, in part because of Sochastel. So feel free to ask and we'll make sure to cover them. So another great location, which is a little bit of a lower elevation, it's Castellrotto. And this is a great option if you have people that, again, maybe don't have a car, right? You're like 20, 30 minutes from Bolzano. So even by transfer, right? We offer transfers, all of the accommodations offer transfer, it's easily reachable. But the cool thing about this is that you are in town. And it is considered, like in Italy, we have like Borghi più belli d'Italia, like the most beautiful borghi in Italy. Castellrotto is considered one of them. So just beautiful, picturesque, and you are right behind the Alpe di Siusi, right? So one of the coolest things to do here is to take the cable car, whether in winter or in summer, and go up to the Alpe di Siusi. You have the Schiller Mountain, which is one of the most famous alpine plateaus in all of Europe. And again, super accessible. So if you have, again, those 3 nights where it's not going to be worth for them to drive 3 hours from Bolzano, right? This is great because you have everything in your fingertip. Again, culture is Latin, elevation a little bit lower at about 3,000 feet, but the Schiller Mountain is at about 8,000 feet. And here we have, so you can see here in the map where you are in comparison to Bolzano. So you're not quite far north, as deep into some of the higher peaks, but again, it's equally as beautiful. And I love, this is probably one of our most proposed destinations and hotels when people do not want to drive, right? Maybe first trip to Italy, first trip to this area, this offers a great alternative. So we're going to talk about Skagulur. Has anybody heard about this hotel? If you have, feel free to share in the chat. You've been to this one too. Would you like to talk about Peter?
No, this is a really cool hotel. So obviously, as you can tell in the picture, it does stand out, right? It provides a lot of contrast to the town that's surrounding it. What's really cool is it's located in a super walkable part of town. So you know, the town of Castellrotto is walkable into itself. So there's a lot of really cool things to do. There's some great shops. There's some fantastic restaurants. This hotel is located sort of right in the historic center. It's actually in a pedestrian area. So you can drive up to it if you're parking there, but for the most part, there's no cars. The hotel was actually started by a family. And this is now the second generation that is running and operating it. And the second generation, so the 2 sons that are now operating the hotel, they're young guys, they're really ambitious. They have completely, what you saw in that picture is not the original hotel, right? The original hotel is a much older sort of 80s era, typical alpine accommodation. They have completely renovated this thing into a very sort of modern twist. It's a very contemporary experience, but it's still very much traditional in that it has a full spa. The restaurant concept that they've built is fantastic and very representative of the Latin culture, which is what they were kind of raised under. They speak both German and Italian and are very fluent in English as well. So just very, very pleasant people to work with, extremely hands-on. The staff are super friendly and the rooms are just clean, simple, and they're emphasizing the view, right? You'll notice in the picture on the bottom right, it's really all about the view. It's all about the environment that you're in and less about, the flash of the amenities. The amenities are fantastic. They've got a full, incredible Scandinavian spa. But for the most part, I mean, the location is just outstanding. And then every little detail has been captured so well. And it does feel a lot smaller than it actually is, because this is, I believe, a 36 room,
which is big for us. It's very big.
That's on the larger side of accommodations for us. Exactly. But it does still have that small boutique feel.
And what I love about them, and this is actually the case for several of the accommodations we'll be presenting today, is that they have a daily schedule of activities. Then the owner himself, Peter, and his brother, they run. So if you have clients that maybe you know, whether the budget doesn't go far or they simply want to relax and not have everyday plan. This is great because they get there, they literally see a menu of activities that they can just book there directly at the accommodation and do them with other guests. So some of the amazing experiences, obviously taking the cable car to the Alpe di Siusi, and then the hike to Lago d'Artemoia, which is only done when it's not really full winter season, because the hikes takes about 12 hours. But because of that, once you get to the lake, it's like one of the most picturesque lakes you'll ever see. The hike is intermediate, right? I mean, if you're hiking 12 hours already, you have to have a certain fitness level, but it's one of those incredible immersive sensorial experiences where you really get to breathe and live the heart of the Dolomites. And it's so cool if you have travelers that are going to Dolomites for a week, create contrast, right? Like what an amazing contrast with like Sotchastel, like more off the beat, or maybe starting with this because it's closer to Bolzano, right? And have everything, and then going off and being just you and, you know, just nature around. So we like to create contrast within our itineraries and our accommodations. So this combination of the more modern Scandinavia and the super traditional Mass, so it's something that you may see a lot if you work with us. Experiences, you know, again, we're not going to go through all of them. The Lago d'Artemoia, I've already mentioned it. And then one that it's important to notice in the fall is the Santos Waldo Togolin, which I always have a hard time saying. And again, this is not just here. We do have a great experience here that we offer, but you can find this experience in other areas within the Dolomites. And this is a tradition where the farmers open up their homes, their farms, and they invite people from the community, guests. Obviously, as travelers, we can plan an experience, and you just have this communal meal of the harvest. Horseback riding, cooking classes, again, those are things that are offered year round. Oh, it's already 7:40, 1:40. Okay, let's talk about Cortina, which is obviously probably the most famous area in the Dolomites, along with maybe Ortisei. If some of you have heard of that, that's where I believe where Sensoria Dolomites is. So Cortina, again, where the Olympics are held, and that's kind of what made them famous in the first place. You're in the heart of the Dolomites. Cortina, if you go off season, so if you pick that week after January 6th, we were there just this past month. It was amazing. It was just the right amount of people. Nobody was there. The hotels were almost empty. And you're like in the middle of peak season, but because we picked a week right after the holiday where we knew places would empty out. So, you know, but if you have clients that like a little bit more action, that like the high-end shopping, a little more of the glamour, right? This obviously is a great locations. Both Latin and Veneto, so Italian influences, elevations 4,000 feet, and the Tofana is probably, and the Sorapis are two of the most iconic peaks. Again, with the accommodation that we'll be featuring is really cool because you're not right in the middle of the town. And what's important to consider too, when you are traveling during the peak season, is the nights and how noisy it gets. And I would say Cortina is one of those more populated villages. So if you're picking accommodation right in town, you know, you may not sleep at night, which is fine, right? For some people, that's what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So before we talk about the hotel here, our partner hotel here, let's talk about the Winter Olympics. Because obviously we work kind of against the mass tourism. This is not something that we'll necessarily be promoting a lot. We have gotten a couple of requests. And, you know, we are going to be in line once the tickets open to secure a few. Obviously the lottery, right, is gonna get pulled in February, and those submissions were already made much earlier. So I don't know if any of you have had a chance to submit your entry for the lottery for the tickets. But again, guys, I mean, Cortina is so small, like the actual town. And with the Olympics, what kind of experience do your travelers want? If they're coming for that and they are ready for anything, be stuck in traffic if you cannot get an accommodation in town, right? That's fine. But for a traveler who just wants to go to Dolomites and have a great time and be immersed, right, probably not the best time to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, anytime you have the world descending upon a community that's built and designed for under 50,000 people, right? you're going to have a pretty overwhelming experience. And, you know, so long as those expectations are very clear in the beginning, I think it does help. So just so you guys know, I mean, obviously, you know, Winter Olympics are the 6th through the 26th of February of next year. In the town of Cortina, they're going to be having the alpine skiing. They have the slide center, which is going to be where you're going to see like the luge, the crazy skeleton people, you know, the ones that go like the head first, and then the bobsledding. So a really exciting number of events, obviously curling among them. And then the snowboarding center is there too. And then you're going to have different events. So opening ceremonies in Milan, and then closing is in Verona. And you'll have a variety of different events in each of those cities as well. And as Karen mentioned earlier, the lottery, or the draw, as they call it, for these tickets have already gone into place. I think people can purchase up to 25 per person. So you better believe that most of those are going to have been purchased and allocated by the time that this opens to the public in February. So expect a lot of second hand and resellers.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're going to get a lot of that. That's going to open up in February. So just kind of be aware of that as you're talking to clients, unless you already have them in hand. Be cautious about committing those to people until you really actually have some commitment. Yeah.
Great. And if you have, like I said, more questions, we do have a couple of requests already for the Olympics. We can connect and kind of talk about all of that, just to make sure that the client knows exactly what to expect. So there's a lot of accommodations in Cortina and a lot of new ones popping up, which some of it is cool, some of it not so much, because to Jet's point, the town is so small, the population, you know, is small, but then it like quintuples, right, during the seasons. Olympics, I don't know how many X time it's gonna be, but the reason why we love this accommodation, Camina Suites and Spa, one, they only have 12 rooms, but the really cool thing about them is that it's located 10 to 12, took us maybe 12 minutes in like walking along the path. So it's located on the road to get into Cortina, but it's connected to the center of town via walking/biking path. Of course, we were there in winter, so we were walking, took us about 12 minutes. So it's great because, again, you get to sleep at night with no noise, but yeah, you can walk 10 minutes and have all the restaurants and the stores and all the action at your fingertips. So really love this property. It's very, like, as you saw from the previous photo, very traditional, simple. Again, a lot of just that alpine feel. They do have a spa. It's not huge, but it works for, you know, 12 rooms. We had a really great experience here that had e-bikes, which is of course amazing, that you can get and just do the whole pedestrian path. So you never get on the road once, and you are surrounded right and left, front to back, by mountain peaks. So you're right there versus some of the other locations where they may be a little bit more, you know, in the distance. So those are seeking a little more action, glamour, right, in the smaller neighboring villages. This would be a good location for. And then, you know, the Tofana Mountain, from which one of, I think, our favorite room is named after. It's obviously a must for anybody who wants to ski or hike. Oh, and the Casunsei pasta, was really exceptional at this accommodation. So definitely recommend it. It's a very traditional Latin dish and was really excellent. Okay, we're moving quickly. So Sarentino, because I do want to leave time for questions. I think that will be important. Sarentino is one of the most off the beaten path areas. It's right outside, like you can see the Dolomites, but it's actually not considered part of the UNESCO Dolomites sub-region. I say region and then I get people confused. And what I love about Sarentino is that there's really not hotel options. It's actually one of the has the highest population in terms of locals, but they are not really built up for tourism. There's only a handful of hotels. It's landscape wise, it's one of the largest areas, again, with the least amount of hotels, of built up things going on. And the hiking, like I would say, if your clients are going for skiing, probably not the best choice. What were you laughing?
Nothing. Go. Keep going.
Okay, can we read it afterwards?
Yeah.
So if you're going here in the winter for skiing, probably not the best choice, because you can still reach the ski slopes within, 15, 20 minutes, but you're not right there. Like some of the other ones where you step right out of the hotel and have the ski slope right there. But it's perfect for hiking. Beautiful. Travelers seeking tranquility, peace, hiking, the Stoneman hike, which I'll show in a second. one of the most beautiful probably hikes in the whole area, because you are a little bit back and you are just surrounded, you're literally on a plateau and you're framed by the surrounding Dolomites peak. So really, really cool place, lower elevation. This is also, 25, 30 minutes from Bolzano. So another great escape if people want to go during fall, summer, and they're looking more for hiking and restoration and relaxation. In fact, if any of your travelers are all about wellness, which is prevalent all over the Dolomites, but this specifically accommodation just brings it home, this is a perfect place. They have 20 rooms, although when you walk in the restaurant, you would think it's much bigger. It's because of their spa and the restaurant. So this is a very unique property. The owner, Gregor, he started a restaurant back in the 90s. Like he had a restaurant back in the 80s and 90s with his family. And they actually got to the point where they got 2 Michelin stars. And then he started seeing about, okay, well, some of the things about having the Michelin star restaurants actually not sustainable, right? Like a lot of the waste in the name of the sexy dishes. So he decided to completely let go of the Michelin star and pursue a zero waste cuisine that it's all based on fermentation. So you're like, I've had here some of the best food I've ever had in my life. And when you're fermenting the food, he says, and he also has a documentary that I'm happy to share if you're into this kind of stuff. It brings out the 6 senses, right? It's like, I can't remember the exact name, but something that happens in your palate. And we had this artichoke that I swear to God was the best artichoke I've ever had in my life. So, excellent for cuisine experience and the spa. Their spa manager, their main guy that does all the treatments, he is one of 150 people in the entire world that trained under this master that I couldn't name to you, but I can send it to you afterwards. And so their spa is by far the best one I've been in this area because of all the different treatments they have. They made me lay down on this machine and I was like, oh, this is kind of hard to lay here 40 minutes. And then he pushed the button and I got into a cloud. It was like zero gravity, like, I don't know what happened, but my body collapsed and it was like this cloud thing. So obviously you have to be into that kind of stuff, but anybody that wants a hiking, wellness, culinary escape, this would be a perfect place. And there is actually a Michelin star restaurant about 15 minutes away at another accommodation, which we won't cover today. But if you're curious, it's called Terra de Magic Place, and it's a Reliance Chateau. This would be an incredible, incredible escape. And again, very close to Bolzano, probably best to have a car here. Experiences here, again, on top of some of the common ones that you'll see, skiing again here mainly for beginners because you are about, an hour and a half away from some of the other areas that are right in the heart, right below the skiing peaks. But for hiking, probably one of the best places. Hiking, relaxation, the Stoneman hike. This is what I was talking about, this picture. Too small, doesn't do it justice, but it's beautiful. The hike itself takes about, it's 4 to 5 miles. So, it takes 5 to 6 hours, depending on how fast you go. Medium level. So nothing like nothing that if people can hike 5, 6 hours, then they can do it. Amazing for biking. And again, wellness treatments, horseback riding, all of this kind of more spring and summer activities. Ooh, we have one more to get through. Okay. How's everybody doing? Going too fast? We lost anybody? Good.
We'll be sending the recording as well to all of you guys. So
yes.
no worries if you missed anything or want to kind of go back on stuff.
Yeah. Val di Fassa, do you want to cover it? Do you want me? Okay, great. Oh, that's right. You haven't actually. So, but yeah, Val di Fassa, it's another really, really cool area. There are some villages within, like you probably heard of Moena, where there is the lake and the Christmas markets. So you may have heard some of those villages, but it is still, much more undiscovered than places like, Cortina, Ortisei, or even Val Gardena. That may be another one that you may have heard of. Much higher elevation, right? Almost 5,000. Marmolada is probably the peak that you've heard about. Part of the Dolomites super ski. So again, here you do not need a car if you don't want one. With a part of the Sella Ronda, the circular ski, and the Marmolada glacier. So an accommodation here, which when we first came across it, we were like, Olympic spa doesn't sound like it's going to be on brand for us. And then we went, right? It's got about 40 rooms, but because it's actually, it has, if you see behind this main structure, there's a lower level, which is actually really cool because it was added later and it used the slope of the mountain to kind of, so you're going, once you get into the hotel, you're going downstairs, but you're actually outside because of it's using the slope of the mountain. So even though it's 40 rooms, it doesn't feel that big because of the way that it was divided. And what I love about this hotel, again, are the people and the activities that they offer on a daily basis. It's adults only, so that's kind of important, right? Especially if you have couples, honeymoons that may not want to be getting away for their anniversary, may not want to be around the kids. Amazing world-class spa, and every single day they offer spa rituals. One of them that we recommend to do in the off-goose, which we did, and it's actually what this guy is doing right here. It is that guy doing it, by the way.
That's me.
And although this is a secondary spa that they have that it's built on right in the forest with wooden posts, but it's basically a ritual where the towel is dipped in all these different essential oils, and you're in this very hot steamy room, and he's like doing literally a CrossFit workout to get this towel to bring all the essential oils to your under your nose. And so it's a very, again, sensorial experience. Ski courses available, ski pass, ski rental. There's a ski bus that stops right in front of the hotel. They have the restaurant. Again, the food was amazing, and they have traditional music a couple of times a week. So actually, when you get to this hotel, they give you a QR code with access to all their daily activities. And again, this is actually counterproductive because you're like, well, then I don't need you to plan all the activities, right? But it is important for you to know, because ultimately it's your client's vacation. If they just want to go and chill and play by ear, they could do it here, right? They could do it at some of those accommodations, also depending on the seasons because of what they offer. Perfect for the young and adventurous. Spa, very much nude. So just, be aware of that. If you work with us, we have all those details in our itinerary, just so your clients can make the right choice, especially when we're showing options. Canederli, it's another very typical Latin pasta dish, and it was absolutely outstanding at this accommodation. Experiences here. So again, similar to some of what we've seen across the board, but again, they all offer something a little bit different. So here you have some nearby hot springs. You have paragliding, which is offered throughout the Dolomites, but in the Val di Fassa specifically. You actually also have, I didn't put it on here because it's a hit or miss, but you also do have hot air balloon rides. You have an amazing hiking everywhere, but one that we really love is the Vial del Pan. Mountain biking, paragliding, again, really great, both winter and summer and fall destination. So, and again, please understand, we would love to spend the whole hour talking about Sochastel, talking about specific experience, talking about one of our alpine guides and massage therapists, right? And talk about his story, but unfortunately, we don't have the time, and we do want to leave you today at least having a good overview and understanding of how to plan a trip to the Dolomites and what kind of conversations to have with your travelers. So on a map, this is kind of where we're taking you, like I said, which doesn't seem like a lot, right? 200 kilometers, but when you're actually driving in the weather with the mountain passes, with the traffic that sometimes creates during the peak seasons, that's why we recommend if they only have 3-4 days, pick one of those destinations. If they have to, pick two. If they have a week, pick two, and make sure that you create, contrast, because there are a lot of contrasting, beautiful, both experiences and accommodations to be offered in each area. Really quick, you want to touch on this?
Yeah. So guys, for those of you who don't know, we do host a number of just very small select group trips every year that we ourselves lead with our local partners in these regions. And one of which is the Dolomites, which is going to be happening September 22nd through the 29th of this year. These are really great options. We do work with travel advisors now. We're starting to really introduce these concepts to travel advisors more and more, because it's really great for solo travelers, people that are wanting to travel on a budget and that are comfortable in sort of of a small group setting. So again, these are like max 10 travelers, which also lends itself to the size of a lot of these accommodations, a couple of which are in this itinerary specifically. So this just gives you some idea, some concept of a way to engage with us specifically, if you do have that, that category of traveler that's looking to have this type of experience. This is a really easy thing to plug into. And then, of course, we do pay out commissions for these as well. So we can talk to you about that later in one-on-one. So very quick highlights of what is included in this trip. This is basically 3 nights at the Sochastel, which is in the Alta Badia, which we covered in the very beginning of the presentation. And then we bring them into Castelrotto at the end. So they're getting this complete, like, different variety and this really big contrast of the Dolomites and these 2 very distinctive regions with distinctive cultures, culinary traditions, history, and architecture. So it is a very cool way of creating that contrast and a very memorable kind of experience. It includes obviously spa access at all of the accommodations. We have guided hikes throughout the entire itinerary,
including the Lago di Artemoia 12-hour hike, or ride the Alpe di Siusi cable car. So it is accessible to different fitness levels. In fact, most of the times we have, you know, half of the group that is like in their 30s and 40s, and then we have some still adventurous, but obviously not going to do a 12-hour hike. People that are like in their 60s, sometime in 70. I mean, you know, I think our oldest biker we had was like in his, you know, well advanced 70s. And we do have that, because we put 2 trip facilitators for 8 to 10 people to allow us for that flexibility to cater to the whole group. And we'll also be going during, reason why we picked the fall dates, the farm festival experience, where all the chalets and farms, they open their homes, so they'll be getting the highly, you know, deep cultural experience.
Exactly. And what's really nice, particularly about this group trip, is that we've mentioned a lot of these places, you really do need a rental car. Well, on these, all of your private transfers are included. And so that means we also have standby transportation. So we have the ability to provide something that is fixed and curated, but it's also highly flexible. And so it's catered to the individual, to their skill level, to their needs and their preferences. And we do have transportation on standby at all times, so that we have some flexibility if they do want to, say, go out and do something on their own. So this is a really great product. It's a really great opportunity to kind of plug people into this experience, get them familiar with this territory as well. So we figured we'd introduce this to you guys. All right.
Do you have any questions that we need?
We do have actually a couple questions. So guys, go ahead. This is a great time to kind of type in your questions as you have them. We don't have everybody unmuted, but feel free to type these in. We've got a couple. So one, besides Sarentino, is there a top area you'd recommend for clients looking for specifically for a mountain bike vacation?
I mean, Alta Badia would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, almost all of them, right, offer great mountain biking. And please understand, it does depend on level, right? Because level, it's very important to understand, is it mountain biking through some of the valleys, or is it actually like, you know, mountains? But a lot of those locations will be great. I would probably, like I said, choose somewhere like Alta Badia, maybe like Sarentino, even Val di Fassa. Somewhere like, you know, Castelrotto, it's great, but it's not right there, right? You'd have to drive a little bit and then, you know, get on some of those routes, but it all depends on level. So happy to connect with you specifically on those requests.
Great. And then we have another question. Are the ski passes, rentals, and courses included in the price of a room?
They are not usually, but almost all of the hotels that we've talked about, they offer them. Some on site, but a lot of the smaller accommodations, what they actually do is that you have to go to the shop to obviously fit for things. And then you can pay a small fee, like €5, and they'll get them delivered to the hotel.
Guys, this is really important to understand when you're talking to people that are going to the Dolomites or to Europe in general for a ski vacation, is how much more affordable skiing is in this part of the world. I mean, these places are beautiful. The resorts and honestly, the slopes, the ski trails are in some cases just as massive and have just as much to offer. But to give you a perspective, you know, for a day pass to ski in, say, the Alta Badia in the super ski area is between 75 and €100 for the day for a person, right? For an adult.
Not even that. Yeah.
In Colorado, say if you went to Breckenridge, right, you're going to spend $285
my God.
for a day of skiing. And that's not including rentals or anything else like that. So the affordability factor is significant in this part of the world. So maybe they can spend a little more on accommodations and other experiences that is offset by what they're saving in their ski trip, right? So just keep that in mind and for your winter travelers,
Right.
they're looking to do this
And
type
if
of
they're
stuff.
staying in Cortina, right, for the same exact level of accommodation, they're gonna spend 1.5 times the money that they're gonna spend in some of those other more off the beaten path area, because it's just a name, right? Chances are, if all your friends and all of the other travel advisors and all the clients have heard of it, it's because of a reason, right? So maybe it's time to not go to the same place that everybody has been to and heard of and go somewhere else, so that also your dollars can go much further.
So a few more questions really quick, guys. Is there an age limit for some of the properties we recommended? So 12 years up, et cetera.
The main one that was adults only was the Olympic Spa. The other ones do not have age limits. Sochastel, I have to check in terms of if they take babies, but that's never been
No, I don't
mentioned.
think
So
so.
yeah, the only adults only that we've covered today was the Olympic Spa. I'll happy to check more if you have specific, like very young children, but
Yeah.
I doubt that's an issue.
And so are you attending True Dolomites in June? Will you book hut-to-hut trips with refugios and have private bathrooms, self-guided or with guide? Do you know anything about that?
When
In June?
are you attending the True
True.
Dolomites in June? No, we are not, because we're actually going to be doing a FAM in June to the Dolomites. So we just talked to Tracy earlier. We should have more details next week or two, finalizing a couple of things. So we'll not be attending that. And as far as the hut to hut, I mean, to be honest, it's not something we've done before. We have received, I think, 1 or 2 requests and questions. We just haven't really had the opportunity to test it. And as you guys know, we're only presenting and bringing things to you that we've, if not us, some of our team members have been able to do and vet. But if you have an interest in that, please let us know. We're local, and we have local managers all over the countries that are here, even for you to tell us, hey, can you go test this experience? I would love to offer it to my clients. We could certainly do that, but we're never going to try and sell you something that we haven't personally vetted. So we haven't done it before, but thank you for bringing it out. It's something we could certainly look into doing.
I think I'll do an R&D ski hut-to-hut trip sometime next winter for sure. I just paid $400 a day at Deer Valley for President's Day. That's insane. No, I mean, seriously, I just paid almost $300 without rentals at Breckenridge on off season. It was just, disgusting. So but really, I mean, people are kind of fed up with that, right? So like that American audience that's used to
the advance rate
ski trips, they're going to look at this and go, are you kidding me? $75 a day? Yeah. Give me a plane ticket tomorrow. Do you recommend ski safaris? Yes. So we are just now designing a ski safari, working with some of our local partners there. So this, again, that is a fairly new concept to us. But we're starting to work with our partners to develop some concepts and some routes. So as we get more familiar with that, we'd be happy to field some inquiries for you.
Right.
For
And
sure.
I think that, again, the most important to touch on that is the weather and the seasonality, right? When people are coming all the way to Italy to go skiing and now there's no snow, that's an issue, right? That's why we've kind of been hesitant to do those specifically just skiing. Like, obviously, we want to be ready to provide a lot of other alternatives, because it can be disappointing. If people, maybe Denver, you're a shorter flight away, right? You can reschedule, but it's been more stable in that part of the world for sure. Even this year, like I said, same time of year, February, the contrast couldn't have been, or January and February couldn't have been bigger.
Yeah. Well, in general too, it is typically more affordable, both accommodations, food, experiences on the Italian side of the Alps than it is in, say, Switzerland, right? So you are going to see a significant price variation there too. Okay, great. So Hope, absolutely, your travel advisor selling Dolomites. We'd love to connect with you for sure. We'll be reaching out to you, all of you guys, after this webinar with a link and how to engage with us further. So please look for that email. How are the conditions for skiing this year, or is it the same as last year? Eleanor?
better.
Yeah, much better this year than last year.
Mhm.
Last year was a lot more like spring skiing, a little bit earlier in the season than it should have been, meaning that everything was a little bit wet, a little bit icy, and not quite as much fresh snow on the ground. So this year's been already off to a much better start. Yeah. And it does, guys, climate change is a thing. It varies from year to year. You have to watch those conditions because these are the first regions that really feel that. I mean, think about it like rain, because it's just precipitation, right? How much rain are you going to get per year? It matters significantly to these places and the experiences people have in them, depending on those conditions. So we try and watch those very carefully. Great. So guys, great questions. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you that are interested in our next webinar, we are going to be featuring one of our favorite regions of the country, which is Puglia. We'll also be talking a lot about Matera, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. So if you guys are interested in joining us for that webinar, please scan the link here. It'll take you directly to the registration page. We're really excited to introduce you guys to some incredible accommodations there. This place has a really special place in my heart. It's the reason I fell in love with Italy. I came here about 16 years ago when I was just getting out of high school, and I stayed about a month in Puglia and just fell in love with the place. So there's a lot of meaning there for us. We've spent a lot of time there. We're going to be spending a lot of time there this year as well. So we'd love to have you guys, love to host you. And thank you so much for being a part of our sensorial journeys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for participating.
Yes.
Awesome. Please, you have to
Oh.
stop sharing. And then
Ciao.
ciao. And then
Stop recording.
Stop recording.